If I could, I'll go ahead and call our meeting to order. I appreciate everyone being here this evening. The first item on our agenda is to call our meeting to order and establish a quorum. We do have a quorum of our board team. We're kind of spread out, but all of our board members are here, so I appreciate everyone being here. Our second item is our invocation. We're honored this evening to have a longtime friend of mine. I've known him, I think, since he was born. Maybe not quite that long, but Brian Hutchison is the student pastor at Paul Lamb Baptist Church. So if you'll come forward, Brian, and lead us in our invocation.
As a student pastor, I just wanted to say to all of the board members and to all of those of you that are here that I have a small understanding of the complexity that lies before you because I'm trying to make the same decisions on a small scale. And I wanted to take the opportunity before I pray just to say thank you for all that you are doing for our children and students in our community. And for the decisions that lie ahead of you. I know it's not easy, and you are appreciated by me for what you guys are doing. So I just want to pray over you to start this meeting. God, I just want to thank you, Lord, for the opportunity and the privilege that it is to be here tonight with this board and with these families that are represented here in this room. And God, I want to pray your blessing upon them. God, during these uncertain times and decisions that have to be made that there is no precedent for, God, I ask that you would give them wisdom. And God, that they would be sensitive to what you're leading on, and that, God, you would show them, God, all the decisions that have already been made and the ones that are still to come, Lord, that you would lead them, and that you would give them like minds in that, and that, God, you would give them the wisdom to make decisions. God, I pray for all of our schools, for the children and the students that are represented, for their teachers and their administrators and those that work behind the scenes. God, would you bless them and would you protect them? And God, I ask that you would continue to allow them this year to meet together, to learn. And God, that this would be a year that many good things would happen in the midst of difficult times. So Lord, I just ask that you would bless them with protection. And God, that you would end this virus and that school could continue on. And Lord, I pray that you would bless them tonight, and Lord, just lead them and guide them in Jesus' name. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. We appreciate that and appreciate you being here. Our next item is our pledges. We're honored this evening to have a couple of young students from Goliad. We have Eric Ramirez, who's a first grader, and Melanie Ramirez, who's a third grader. And they're also the students of a couple of our employees. Zach's our principal at Lakeview, and Jessica works downstairs in our athletic department. So if they'll come in, and as they get located, we'll stand and let them lead us in our pledges. Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. Good job. And I always tell the parents they can take pictures, but they might not want a picture of their children in masks. So we'll work through that. I'll go ahead and read our script for tonight. It says, good evening and welcome. As President of the Board of Trustees of San Angelo Independent School District, I'd like to welcome all of our guests who are present at tonight's regular board meeting. I also welcome those of you who might be watching the tape of this meeting on our public access channel, Channel 4. We appreciate your interest in our students. All items that will be discussed at our meeting this evening have been posted as required by state law. Also, as you may be aware, our board meets a minimum of 2 times per month, and most, if not all, the items on our agenda this evening have been previously discussed at a pre-agenda board workshop. As members of the San Angelo Independent School District's Board of Trustees, we're here to set goals, listen to reports from our superintendent, approve budgets, contracts, and personnel appointments, and to make policy for the school district. Please keep in mind that our meeting is a meeting of the Board of Trustees held in public and not a meeting of the public. However, with that in mind, we have an item on each one of our meeting agendas that allows anyone present who wishes to speak to our board team an opportunity to do so. I'll make certain that we give everyone an opportunity to speak on any item not listed on our agenda this evening. Additionally, prior to taking any votes, I will ask audience members if they would like to make any comments. Anyone wishing to make comments on any agenda item should do their best to limit their comments to five minutes. In compliance with Texas state law, these proceedings are recorded and will become a part of SAISD's permanent legal record. In order that the tape might adequately reflect our proceedings, I ask that you please refrain from talking while others might be speaking, and also ask, as I remind my fellow board team members, to please turn off or silence your cell phones at this particular time. Again, it's my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's meeting, and thank you for taking the time to join us this evening. We appreciate your interest in the activities of our students and the business of our district. And I do have one final reminder that if it's an item that's not on our agenda this evening and you're here to speak, and I'll cover this when we get to public comment as well, the board really can't respond to that because it's not part of our agenda. We can thank you for being here, and if we have any specific question, then we can ask that, but we can't have a lengthy discussion about something not on our agenda this evening. So with that's taken care of, we'll move forward to our recognitions, and I'll turn it over to Ms. Wood.
A little shorter. Good evening, Mr. Lehman and distinguished members of the board. Tonight, we have a very special recognition. We are recognizing our DESK board. DESK stands for Donate Educational Supplies for Kids. And these dedicated individuals you see here tonight, and a few that couldn't make it, have worked tirelessly to raise funds for our San Angelo ISD students who are in need of school supplies. In 2004, DESK founder and board president Eric Wilson identified an unmet need in our community and set his focus, determination, and generous spirit on finding a solution. That solution was the formation of a board of concerned Concho Valley community members who set out to raise funds for our San Angelo ISD students in need of school supplies. Since 2004, DESK has raised an astounding $780,555.09 and brought countless smiles to our students, ultimately helping them to succeed in the classroom. This year, a year with so many unique challenges facing our students and educators, DESK has generously given our SAISD students school supply money in a total amount of $60,023.74. That's $60,000 that is allocated and then distributed out to all of our campuses, helping individual children have the supplies they need to be confident and to be on a path to succeed. Each campus in the district receives a percentage of the total amount of money raised based on the number of students who receive assistance through our free and reduced meal program. This evening, we are honored to have these members of the DESK board with us. Dr. Deathloff, at this time, would you please come forward and help me to recognize the DESK board members who are here this evening, and we'll also announce the ones that weren't able to make it. Excuse me, I've got to do my mask. We have Miss Vicky Loso. And if y'all can please remain up here, we're going to take a group photo in just a minute, so just stay up here for just a minute. Miss Diane Wilson. Mr. Ken Grimm. Mr. Andy Meyer. And then I'd like to announce the ones that weren't able to make it tonight. Mr. Eric Wilson, who his wife will accept on his behalf. And then we have Mr. David Wagner, Miss Cheryl Book, Miss Jennifer Call, Miss Kathy Self, Miss Elizabeth Jost, and Miss Jacqueline Ochoa. We thank you so very much. And please join me in giving the DESK board a very appreciative round of applause on behalf of our board members, administration team, faculty, staff, and students of SAISD.
Thank y'all so much. Yeah, it's amazing how much support they've given the school district through the years, and they just keep chugging along, helping us out. So thank y'all on behalf of all of our students. Our next item on our agenda is item 5, which is the minutes of our previous meetings. Do we have a motion to approve?
Move for approval.
Second. We have a motion from Mr. Dindal and a second from Mr. Gallegos to approve the minutes of our August 10th, 2020 Special Financing Pre-Agenda Workshop, our August 17th, 2020 regular board meeting, and our August 24th, 2020 special meeting to adopt our budget. Do we have any questions or corrections to our minutes from any of our board team? Any public comment? If not, all in favor of our motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, indicate by saying no. Our motion passes. Okay, now we're to the item I referred to earlier, which is public comment for items not on our agenda this evening. I think I counted 26 folks that want to speak. There's a couple of things I know, and feel free to do so, but we have a couple of husbands and wives signed up that both want to speak, and if you're going to say the same thing, then I would appreciate it if you would help us to conserve our time as a board this evening. But if you want to speak, then I won't keep you from doing that. Some of y'all been through this multiple occasions, but let me remind everybody how we're going to handle public comment. You're limited to 5 minutes. We've had a couple of folks that don't have a good appreciation of time in the last couple of months, and in lieu of me interrupting someone, it would be much better if you would monitor your own time and make sure that if you speak 8 minutes and somebody else speaks 5, then that's not fair to anybody else in the room. So let's do our best to limit our time to 5 minutes. If your comments are longer and you know they're going to be longer, then please try to edit those before you get up here. If I call your name and you haven't edited it, then maybe you can do that and we'll come back to you. And then certainly you can leave your comments as part of our public record. We had a couple of live forums last week. I want to remind everybody that the expectation is that we have a very respectful decorum in this room, and so we don't tolerate any foul language or anything like that. So please be mindful of that. And the final thing, as a reminder, is that at least on a couple of occasions we've had some folks who might have said something bad about one another on social media, and they want to continue that discussion here rather than make a point about the issue at hand. So we would prefer for that not to happen as well. I'll ask, as far as time concerned, I'll ask Ms. Hopkins, who's back over there in the corner, to help me monitor time, and so she'll politely notify me or raise her hand, and then at that point in time I'll do my best to interrupt also politely and ask you to conclude your comments as quickly as possible. So is everybody on board with that? If that's the case, then we'll start. And the first person I have is Brandon Connell. Come on forward, Brandon. Thank you for being here.
All right. Once again, my name is Brandon Connell, and I'd like to second what Mr. Hutchinson said in appreciation for everything that you guys do. I know it's impossible to make everybody happy, so what you guys do is nearly impossible, so thank you all for everything. I was a little bit hesitant to come here and speak tonight, mainly because I wondered what could I possibly say that hasn't already been said. And then I realized how surprised I am that we're still having this conversation. Why is this even a point of contention? The Civil War was one of the darkest times in U.S. history. We all know how it turned out, yet here in the South, there was a really interesting phenomenon that happened. The powers that be decided to start naming schools and building statues, honoring people that lost the war. Okay. It probably made sense back then. I mean, why not? Cultural sensitivity and equality has never really been one of America's greatest strengths. So why would they take other people of different races and or cultures' feelings into consideration while establishing these honors? Jim Crow laws were still in effect. The Civil Rights Act hadn't been created yet. So yeah, racism was still pretty prevalent back in 1949 when Lee Middle School was named. So let's fast forward 71 years to today, and this discussion did change the name of the school. In my mind, it's a no-brainer, yet here we are. Despite what many claim, the Civil War was kind of about slavery, and if anyone in here still disagrees, allow me to quote briefly from the Texas Declaration of Causes from February 2nd of 1861. Essentially, they're talking about northern states pushing their agendas and whatnot onto the southern states. And basically, they're proclaiming the debasing doctrine of the equality of all men, irrespective of race or color, a doctrine at war with nature. In opposition to the experience of mankind and in violation of the plainest revelations of the divine law, they demand the abolition of, forgive the term, Negro slavery throughout the Confederacy, the recognition of political equality between the white and the Negro races, and avow their determination to press on their crusade against us, so long as Negro slaves remain in these states. Granted, this is just a mere paragraph out of an entire document of grievances against the federal government. However, the other grievances were things like lack of federal protection from banditry from Mexico or native attacks. So you may think that I just took this little segment out of context. However, let me remind you that there are 21 mentions of slavery throughout this declaration, and many mirror the sentiments of the recited passage. With that said, there is no reason that we, in 2020, knowing all of this, should still be okay with honoring a man who fought for the right to own people as property. Why would we as a community continue to willingly be divisive and continue to argue over this? Why should we knowingly be hurtful to our kids? Any of them. If you're asking yourself, how is this hurtful? Be thankful that you have the luxury of not knowing, because not everybody can say that. So imagine this. You're walking into school every day with the visage of a man that fought for the continuation of the enslaving of your ancestors all over the place. That's every day for you. You have to live with that. Not everybody has to live with that, but there are some. Recently, there was a campaign around town that said, San Angelo love. Well, here's an easy one. Let's show our future generations that San Angelo does love them, that we do care about them, all of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Connell. We appreciate those comments. Our next person is Mr. Little, Kevin Little. Mr. Little, thank you for being here.
I just want to thank the board for allowing me to speak today. I appreciate everything that y'all do. Thank you. My name is Kevin Little. I'm a former student of Lee Junior High. I was born and raised here in San Angelo, Texas, and I'm a proud citizen of this lovely city. The reason why it's important to me to change the name of Lee Junior High is that I feel that the name Robert E. Lee does not represent the diversity of our amazing community and is not inclusive of all nationalities and cultures here in San Angelo. Our educational institution should be a welcoming environment that gives their students the skills and confidence to become great leaders in their community, whether it be here in San Angelo or to be wherever their ambition takes them. Now, when Lee Junior High was created and at the time when the name of the school was chosen, the opinions of people of color were not taken into account at that time. Their personal experiences and their sorrow could not be conveyed at the time when choosing a name for the school could be considered. They most certainly would not have wanted it to bear the name of Robert E. Lee, an individual who glorified white supremacy, a man who advocated for the enslavement of people of color, and one who represented a treasonous government responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of American citizens. Now, to the individuals who say that this is just now a topic of conversation because of our current political climate, I would like to state that this was a topic of conversation in my very own history class at Lee Junior High 25 years ago. I distinctly remember my African American friends and how they conveyed to me that the name Robert E. Lee made them feel unappreciated, and that their opinions and the experiences of their families were not taken into account when the school's name was chosen. Now, the school name Robert E. Lee, along with its mascots and the school colors that were chosen, all represent a time of oppression. They represent a time when people of color were enslaved. They represent a time when women were unable to vote. And they represent a time when our country was literally torn apart. This conversation was had a quarter of a century ago when I was a student there. Now, how many times has this same conversation come up before and after those 25 years since I was a student there? Now, I believe the correct route to take would be the direction that our armed forces have taken, who prohibited the display of the Confederate flag, which should also mean we should also remove the names of those individuals that fought under that flag from the places of education, as it commemorates the intolerance, violence, and hatred that the Confederacy represents. Now, in Lee Junior High's mission statement, the very first line states that their mission is to honor all of their students. All of their students. I feel that the only way to truly honor all of the students and faculty would be to rename the school to someone or something that would best represent all of our diverse and amazing community of San Angelo. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Little, for those comments. Our next person signed up is O'Neill Westbrook. Thanks for being here, Mr. Westbrook.
Thank you. Let me begin, and I'll end with a quote. It says, "Take with you the satisfaction of duty faithfully performed." For many years at Lee Junior High School in San Angelo, and I speak from experience. I'm a former student. I went there. I'm a former teacher. I'm a former coach, and I'm a former assistant principal at Lee Junior High. Let me tell you what our creed was always. Try to teach our students to be the best that they could be. That's all. Not be something that you can't be, but do the best at what you were taught. And it went from the administration all the way down to the students. I did that in the classroom, and the teachers that I was with for 15 years did exactly the same thing. When I was a student, Lee Junior High was not segregated. I mean, it was not integrated, it was segregated. I didn't come up with that. That wasn't my idea. That's just the way it was. When I came back to teach, we were integrated. And I thought it added a great deal to what we were trying to teach our kids, which is be the best you can be. That's all. Nothing else. Gilbert, you played against Lee Junior High School students, remember? Did we teach them to be as good as they could be? Sure. Did your teachers teach you to be as good as you could be? Of course. That's what education is about. Be the best you can be. That's all. If you can't do that, then what are we going to school for? That's what school is about. There was a picture in the foyer of Lee Junior High School. When I first went there as a student, when I went back as a teacher and a coach, and the words that I quoted to you tonight are the words of Robert E. Lee. Take with you the satisfaction of duty faithfully performed. Lady and gentlemen, I ask you tonight, take with you the satisfaction of duty faithfully performed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Westbrook, for those comments. Our next person wishing to speak is Michael Shane Powers. Thank you for being here, Mr. Powers.
Good evening, members of the board. Thank you for having me and letting me be able to speak this evening. My name is Dr. Michael Shane Powers. I'm an Angelo State University Assistant Professor of U.S. History, and I've studied the Civil War for a decade and am currently teaching a course on the U.S. Civil War. And I'm in support of changing the name of Robert E. Lee Middle School. I'm also a white Southerner whose ancestors have fought for the Confederacy, whose grandparents were sharecroppers and tenant farmers, and I support changing the name of Robert E. Lee Middle School. Ensuring that public symbols and institutions reflect American values is an important step for any community. San Angelo residents and the ISD need to look no further than our own national past. After the Declaration of Independence, Americans removed public symbols that no longer matched the values of the new nation, changing the name of King's College in New York City to Columbia University, and removing numerous statues to British monarchs. Doing so did not then, and will not now, change or erase history. We, of course, still study and teach colonial America, just like our schools and universities will continue to teach about Lee and the Civil War. Names of public institutions is, however, about honoring and celebrating the legacies of those individuals. In regards to Robert E. Lee, his primary legacy is as a Confederate. Lee chose to fight for the Confederacy. Plenty of other men whose states embraced secession did not join the Confederacy, including prominent Texan Sam Houston, Edmund Davis, and even many a fellow Virginian of Robert E. Lee, most notably the Union Admiral David Farragut. As the Texas Declaration of Secession clearly states, the Confederacy's primary legacy was to protect and promote slavery. As for Lee, following the Emancipation Proclamation, he refused to exchange African American Union troops who had become prisoners of war, arguing that they, quote, belong to our citizens and are not considered subjects of prisoner exchange, end quote. So it is my hope that a city like San Angelo, defined by kindness and congeniality, will lead the way in showing the better angels of our nature and choose to remove the name Robert E. Lee in favor of a name that fully represents our community's values. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Powers. We appreciate that. Our next presenter, next person to speak will be Ms. Cross, Debbie Cross. Thank you for being here, Ms. Cross.
Good evening. Back here again. Thank y'all for giving us the opportunity to do this. For those of you who are advocating the name of our school, or advocating to keep the name of our school, which I and generations of San Angeloans grew up with, I would like to first clarify what I truly believe in and what I do not. I recognize that across our nation there is a rigorous and appropriate dialogue about the monuments and names of organizations that some feel are offensive and even harmful to them. There is also a reasonable concern by many that achievements, suffering, and contributions made by individuals from African American, Hispanic, and minority communities have not been appropriately recognized in the public realm. I understand this. My position is the name of our school is also part of our tradition that we grew up with and associate in our dialogue with each other and our memories. I honestly know very few people who specifically think of the school as Robert E. Lee, but rather as Lee. There has never been, in my mind, associations with anger or hatred or even the outcome of the Civil War. It is rather simply the beloved name associated with the heritage of growing up in San Angelo, our childhood memories, and our sense of community. It should be noted that when I speak of who I am, that over the years through marriage, friendship, and a lifetime of living and working in our community, that as a parent, grandparent, and a child of a diverse cultural community, I am fighting for the heritage of a name that is in its simplest form associated with love, family, and community. Our school district is a place of education. The name of a school can also present an opportunity for a true dialogue and learning environment around the difficult issues that have been fought over, struggled for, and against, and could therefore take from this name and association an opportunity for a true learning dialogue. It should be taught that Robert E. Lee's father, Henry Lighthorse Harry Lee, was a hero of the American Revolution and fought to create this nation. I strongly advocate for other forms of recognition for many remarkable individuals of African American, Hispanic, Asian, and other heritages that helped build this nation and our community that I do agree have not been appropriately recognized. As the district and community continue to grow, we should always give first consideration to this kind of recognition as we build new schools and facilities. I feel that this can be done without turning our backs on our already established heritage. We are not fighting to save a monument of a Confederate general sitting on a horse in our public square, but a name that is associated with love, community, and family, and a lifetime of associations that will carry us throughout and to the end of our lives. I strongly urge the school district to take these concerns and considerations and keep the name of our beloved school. I recently went to my bookshelf for more information on Robert E. Lee and found an old set of encyclopedias from the 70s. I know, that dates me, but anyway, that's what I had. Back before the controversies, it was written in the World Book of Encyclopedia. Robert Edward Lee, 1807 to 1870, was a great general who commanded the Confederate Army in the Civil War. He was one of the most beloved figures in American history. Lee's fame rests on his military achievements as Confederate commander in the face of overwhelming odds and on his outstanding personal character. He won the admiration and respect of Northerners as well as Southerners. Lee fought for one section of the young nation, but the struggle did not make him intolerant. He fought not for personal gain, but to prove himself worthy of a cause. Union General Ulysses S. Grant, to whom Lee was forced to surrender to, said, "There was not a man in the Confederacy whose influence on the whole people was as great as his." Unlike many Southerners, Lee did not believe in slavery and did not favor secession. He felt that slavery had an evil effect. Long before the war, he freed the few slaves who he had inherited when he married. Lee greatly admired George Washington and hated the thought of a divided nation. On October 12th, Robert E. Lee will have been gone 150 years. He died after a short illness in October 12th of 1870. He is buried in the chapel he built on the campus in Lexington, Virginia, and we should honor him, and he deserves to be honored. Robert E. Lee is an American veteran, a hero, and should not be treated the way he's being treated today. He should be honored for his achievements, his integrity, and his moral character. He truly deserves to be honored. I want to thank the administration, the school board, members, SISD staff, and all your efforts toward this issue. Thank you. And I also have a petition here signed by registered voters in San Angelo that I will make a copy and get to Becky and get to y'all.
Okay,
as soon as
thank you,
possible.
Ms. Cross.
Thank you.
Appreciate your comments this evening. Our next person to sign up is Camille Martinez. Ms. Martinez. All right. Next would be Mr. Miller, Larry Miller. Thank you, Mr. Miller, for being here. Oh, yeah.
You're signaling me
she's coming upstairs.
Okay, well, we'll get her next. Go ahead, Mr. Miller.
Okay.
My name is Larry Miller. I'm retired Air Force, also a retired teacher. A lot of what I'm going to talk about here really isn't germane to whether you're going to rename a building or not, but what it has to do with some of the underlying issues I think that it's important to talk about. Last month, in the course of their talk, a speaker mentioned that Robert E. Lee was responsible for the deaths of Mexican and Native American people. Now, if I understood the speaker's remarks correctly, and I hope that there's somebody in here who can correct me on it, the person was alluding to Lee's service in the Mexican and Indian Wars. If this is the case, this is without a doubt one of the greatest distortions of historical fact that I have ever heard. Yes, Lee fought in the Mexican War when he was a captain in the United States Army. He was instrumental in the United States Army's victories at Cerro Gordo and Chapultepec, was wounded in battle, and later assigned to various frontier forts in Texas to control the Native American population in those areas and protect American settlers. Now, I can readily understand criticisms directed at the United States' involvement in the Mexican War and the series of Indian wars that our country fought. However, I strongly disagree with that speaker's characterization of soldiers like Lee who fought for their country by calling them murderers. Soldiers are not given the luxury of picking and choosing where they fight. The government they've sworn to defend decides where they are to go and who their enemy is going to be. I honestly thought about saying something that evening, but decided that since we're mostly adults in this room, we could all interpret these comments and choose to either believe or disbelieve them. Now, fast forward to the last Monday preparation meeting you had. I think most of us were there. Another speaker came forward and used nearly the exact, almost verbatim comment about Lee being responsible for the deaths of Mexican and Native Americans. Only this time it was really different. The speaker was a little girl, about 12 or 13, that actually attends Lee. Frankly, I was shocked when I heard her repeat this fiction. I asked myself, where could she have learned this fabrication? Did her social studies class at Lee get so in-depth in American history that they would even discuss the wartime conduct of a very junior officer, then Captain Robert E. Lee, during his service in the Mexican and Indian Wars? I have a very hard time believing that this was just a coincidence, that two different speakers on two separate occasions should both completely distort American historical fact and cast a shadow over Robert E. Lee's honorable service while in the United States Army. Before I say anything else, understand that the little girl I'm talking about is not guilty of anything. As far as I can see, she's a complete innocent and seems to have been duped by someone she no doubt trusted. My complaint is that someone, an adult that should know better, seems to have coached her to present this completely fictitious story. This is an important and often emotional struggle that we're all going through with this issue. But a definite ethical line was seriously crossed here. No one, not a teacher, not a friend, no one should ever use a child as just a useful tool or collateral damage or as a means to an end. I don't really care to know who the person was that set this little girl up, but the damage is done. And whoever did this should be terribly ashamed of what they've done to this little girl. I'd like to briefly summarize some of the other actions I've seen from the other side that trouble me. When this debate first surfaced in June, that group demanded a name change and threatened you, the Board of Trustees. Next, they presented a bogus petition of some 13,000 signatures from all points of the globe that we successfully debunked and shot full of holes. Next, they started hanging unsubstantiated labels on Lee as a traitor and a murderer, while never presenting a single bit of information to prove their assertion. Based on fact and emotion, he was neither. And now finally, they manipulated a little girl in an effort to satisfy their agenda. All in all, this is a truly very sad statement about their tactics. And before I leave the podium, I'd like you to also consider all of the witnesses that the opposing side had appear before the microphone. Based on what I've just told you and what you've personally seen, should you put any credence at all into any of their statements? Were they actually intimidated at Lee? Were they embarrassed by the name? Were they really affected by attending a school named after Robert E. Lee? Or are all of these stories just further attempts by that side to remove a name they simply don't like? Ultimately, it's for you to decide, but personally, I think it's all a smokescreen to deceive us all.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. We skipped Ms. Martinez. Ms. Martinez is, there you are. I know, I'm sorry. I didn't get word that you were down there quick enough, so. So we have Ms. Camille Martinez. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Lehman, members of the board, and fellow community members. Once again, thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak to you today. As I'm sure you know by now, I'm here to express my continuing thoughts on the renaming of Robert E. Lee Middle School. As I reflect on the past few months and all of the interactions I've had with my fellow community members about the name change, my heart is heavy. I try to stay hopeful that as a society we are capable of progression, of empathy, and of compassion, but I'm also fearful. Although I have had the pleasure of meeting wonderful people on both sides of this discussion, and I have had respectful conversations where I thought there would only be disdain, I have also seen a lot of anger and a disturbing lack of empathy. I've listened to accusations of my colleagues and I belonging to specific political parties or extremist groups of having hidden agendas and seeking only to divide when, in fact, the opposite is true. The idea that one political party is racist and the other is anti-racist is mind-blowing. The idea that equality and inclusivity are even seen as political issues and not humanitarian issues is heartbreaking. This issue is about ethics, not politics. Social media applications give us opportunities to review memories from past years. In the past few months, I've also been reminded of the horrific events of 9/11, of Hurricane Katrina, as well as Dr. Martin Luther King's speech during the March on Washington, and the events that followed. I've been reminded of all the powerful symbols that are associated with these pivotal turning points in history and the unity that came from them. We are currently in the middle of another pivotal moment in history. Although it may seem small, this decision will have a significant impact on the future of our community. I can only hope that in the end we continue to choose unity over division, that when our children look back on these memories, they see that we chose to protect each other and that we chose love and understanding over fear and hate. Our duty as parents, as adults, as members of this community is to collectively protect and prepare our children for the future. It is our responsibility to raise our children to be empathetic, compassionate, and respectful. As a mother, it was immediately made clear to me that my job is to raise my children to be better than myself. Becoming a teacher has only solidified this fact. Our job is to raise these children to think critically, to come to their own conclusions, and to be better than the generations before them. Another argument I've heard throughout this process is that we are attempting to erase history. And the fact is, the idea behind naming structures and institutions after people has always been to hold them in a place of honor. It was never intended to teach history. When given the opportunity, and when given both sides of the story and a full picture of what the issue at hand is, children will always choose compassion. They will always choose inclusivity and equality. It isn't until we are tainted by news outlets, by social media, by this idea that we need to choose a side, that we allow these basic morals and ideas to be clouded and hidden. If we strip this issue down to its core, it is simply this. Symbols do and will always carry power, and this particular symbol causes pain to a very specific group of our fellow community members. Regardless of whether or not you're able to empathize, whether or not you're able to understand why, the simple fact should be enough to agree that anything that harms one of us harms us all. Division has no place in our community. Removing these people from a place of honor, especially in an educational setting, is the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate those comments, Ms. Martinez. Our next speaker is Nelda Nallen. Ms. Nallen? Thank you for being here.
Thank you for your time this evening. I appreciate it. My concerns deal with the academics in San Angelo ISD, and therefore my comments will be short tonight. In the June 15th meeting, I went over the grade that Lee Junior High received from the Texas Education Agency in 2019. That grade was a D. At that time, I pointed out that 62% of Lee students couldn't read on grade level, and 61% of Lee students were not on grade level in math. These scores can be found on the Texas Education website. In addition, I want to point out that the San Angelo ISD was ranked in the bottom 50% of all Texas school districts in 2012. But in 2019, they were ranked in the bottom 25% of all school districts in Texas. How does that compare? Well, I went to what I expected to be lower scores, so I went to Brownsville, McAllen, Eagle Pass, and I found out that they ranked in the top 30 and 40% of all districts in Texas. I know that changing the name of Lee is very important to some people in our community. I, however, feel that we need to focus on academics and put more money into programs which will improve academic progress for all of our students. And therefore, tonight I ask you, look closely at the programs that are in each of the failing schools. We have 5 F schools in San Angelo. We have 3 D schools. Please look at those and say, what can we do as a community to help you improve those grades? Because that affects the future of all students from San Angelo. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nallen. We appreciate your comments. Our next person is Ms. Hurd, Chelsea Hurd.
I'm Chelsea Hurd, the parent of a middle school student.
Ms. Hurd, you might want to move a little closer to the mic. Yeah, yes, ma'am. Or move it down. That's perfect. So that way we'll get it on our telecast. Thank you.
In last week's summit meeting, the opposition struggled to understand the relevance of equity and equality. I would like to share my family's history in hopes of clarification. In 1947, my great-great-grandfather challenged his granddaughter's school district in the case of Delgado versus Bastrop ISD. Although she was a native-born Texan, as were her parents and grandparents, she was required to go to a school that was neither equal or equitable. Because she was brown, she was forced to go to a school that did not have the same amenities or resources afforded to white children. Her school had no running water or electricity, with 1 teacher to service all ages. This is only 2 years before Robert E. Lee Middle School was opened. Equality means brown children also have a place to go to school. Equity means brown children had all the necessary resources to excel academically to the same level as white children. The Mena Ward School District the Mena Ward School was not equitable. Today, as we advocate for the renaming of Robert E. Lee Middle School, let's remember, children are afforded equality, but not equity. Children of all ethnicities are allowed admittance, but representation differs. Robert E. Lee never posed a threat to white children, but Robert E. Lee did pose a threat to black and brown children. I would like to reiterate that history is not being erased, it is being remembered. Although my great-great-grandfather is no longer alive, his granddaughter is. I had the privilege of watching her address the public in 2016 when the Texas Historical Commission placed a historical marker on the site where the Mina Ward School once stood. While the four walls of that substandard building have fallen, the lessons learned there are still in the minds of the former students. While the building is gone, I was still able to learn about its history. Even in total decay, the building has no effect on one's ability to learn and/or remember its history. We must rename Robert E. Lee Middle School. I shared last month that I grew up all around the world as the daughter of a soldier. My very first friends were both biracial. One white and Korean, the other black and Lumbee, a tribe native to what is now North Carolina. Race, heritage, or culture never defined them as my friends or even as students. The three of us participated in the Gifted and Talented program in elementary, the pre-AP program in middle school, and the AP program in high school. Again, the color of our skin was never addressed directly or passively by our education system. I can only speculate at the difference in education we might have received if we attended a school with a racist symbolism in a district complacent with such. It genuinely breaks my heart to know my sixth grader is represented by a school district that has allowed and upheld such shameful notions. When a person redirects the conversation about the school name to taxes, politics, or even test scores, it shows me that they are uncomfortable discussing race, diversity, and equality. We must accept that the students are not exclusively white or affluent. With that understanding, we must accept that what is best for one is not equitable for all. We must be the adults devoted to equity in order to progress collectively. This starts with equitable representation for our children. The rebranding of Robert E. Lee Middle School is necessary for all children. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hurd, for being with us this evening. We appreciate your comments. Our next person wanting to speak is Kaylee Cortez. Ms. Cortez, welcome. I talked to her earlier, no broken bones. She's okay, just got a bad sprain. So thank you for being here, Ms. Cortez.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Kaylee Cortez, and I'm a sixth grader at Robert E. Lee Middle School. Some adults say they have never heard a student complain about the name. I don't think they are being honest. And if they're being honest, they've never bothered to diversify their group of friends. I'm a student, and I'm saying that's wrong. I have heard former students as old as my parents say it's wrong. I've even heard former students as old as my grandparents say it's wrong. So if you've never heard students say it's wrong, you're not listening. We can't continue to let people and symbols that stand for division in our country represent people like me who want us to be united. School should be a place where we feel welcomed and confident. The name Robert E. Lee Rebels only allows some students to feel welcomed and confident. The people who are defending the name feel welcomed and confident under Confederate representation. I do not. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. We appreciate your comments. We appreciate you being here this evening. Our next speaker is Sarah Negovitich. Is that correct? Okay.
Actually, if I could defer, I didn't know the agenda item. If I could defer to agenda 8E.
Sure, 8E. On our consent items?
Yes.
Okay. That's perfect. 8E. And Nick, is that your same concern?
Yes.
Okay. Don't let me forget to call on you when we get to that point. This next one, I have no idea who it is. I asked Gerard to help me. He couldn't read it either. So we think it's,
Let me see, it looks like. Is it Renee?
Burlington Road.
Yeah, lives on.
Come on forward. And you can tell us your name.
Oh, Rebel Dowdle.
Tell us your name.
Is that right?
Well,
It's Rebel Dowdle.
Gerard thought it was Rebel, but he didn't say it was Rebel. So come forward, come forward. You're welcome. Okay. You'll have to remind me. Sarah Esquivel. And Justin Lujan? Okay. Thank you for being here, Ms.
for having
Esquivel.
me. You have to bear with me. This is my first time speaking, so I'm a little nervous. Hello, and thank you for giving me this time to speak. My name is Sarah Esquivel, and I'm a mother of 3 children. I'm also a lead parent. Let me rephrase that I'm also a very concerned lead parent. There are many people here who are very intelligent and passionate about their opinions. I come to you not as a history scholar, nor will I pretend to be. I come to you as a mother, speaking from her heart, but nonetheless a mother who knows right from wrong. Growing up, I was always aware of the peculiar and disturbing choice of name for the junior high that my child now attends. I always understood the reasoning behind the name, and I never agreed with it. However, growing up in a small West Texas town, you just learn there are some things you don't question. It wasn't until I realized I wasn't the only one who shared the same mentality. It turns out there are several people from different walks of life, different ethnic backgrounds, and different educational backgrounds who also don't agree with the fact our junior high was named after a man who fought in favor of slavery. This is a time of change, a time of waking up and realizing inclusiveness is good for the country. And those who have been excluded for so long, we have seen this change, especially in Congress, strong, intelligent women of color, women who fought to get to where they were, tooth and nail, despite the challenges set before them. We're often asked, what is changing the name going to accomplish? Well, it's a small baby step in a long journey ahead, a journey to right the wrongs of the past and to acknowledge the hurt and pain that this country has caused so many people. These kids deserve to go to a school named after something positive, something inclusive to represent everyone at the school, regardless of color or background. I truly believe if we do not change the name of Lee Junior High, we will be sending our kids a message that glorifying a man like Robert Lee is acceptable. This should not be considered acceptable at all, especially in the year 2020. We have come way too far to take that step backwards. I ask you to move forward and embrace positive change. These decisions are made at a local level, and they will set the tone for how outsiders view our little town of San Angelo, and they will be part of your legacies, not only as board members and pillars of this community, but also as mothers and fathers and uncles and cousins. Our sister towns of Midland and Abilene have already made the decision to embrace the change, and I personally applaud them in their journey to right the wrongs of the past, and I hope we can soon say the same about this town we all love so much. I'm here despite stage fright, despite the possibility of public backlash and ridicule. I'm here because I want to be able to look my children in the eyes and know that I'm doing my job in teaching them that they have a voice, and that voice is powerful. Also, rest assured, my son, whom is about to speak, has a wonderful mind of his own, and he knows that his mother has taught him nothing but the pursuit of truth and equality. No manipulations nor distortions. Many of you have attended Lee in the past, but he is our future. His voice deserves to be heard. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Esquivel. You did quite well, considering you were afraid, so thank you for being with us. Our next speaker is Justin Lujan. Thank you, Mr. Lujan, for being with us.
My name is Justin, and I go to Lee Junior High. When my mom told me what was going on and how there were people in this town who wanted to change the name of my school, I didn't really understand at first why was it so important. So after talking to her, I remembered about a time when I was in first grade and I brought home a project. The project was to create a poster board talking about all the reasons why Christopher Columbus was a hero. My mother took the project and told my teacher she didn't agree with it and asked them to give me another topic. After I researched Christopher Columbus, I understood why she did what she did. It is up to us to stand up for what is right, even when it goes against the crowd, even when a lot of people are telling you that you're wrong. My school should not be named after a Confederate general who fought to keep slavery when we have junior highs like Glenn, who was named after an astronaut, and Lincoln, the president who freed the slaves. That makes no sense even to an 11-year-old like me. I ask you to please think about the message you will be sending to me
and my friends if we choose not to change the name of our school. One cool option I want to suggest was General Grant, the person who defeated General Lee in Virginia. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lujan. We appreciate your comments. Our next speaker is Mr. Ramon, Jesse Ramon. Thank you, Mr. Ramon, for being with us.
Thank you, Board. So 3 months ago, when I started the petition to rename the school, I have been to a number of meetings, all that I can think of. So I just wanted to once again reiterate our thanks and appreciation for the very meticulous and methodical approach to this very sensitive topic. As you can tell, there's other public schools and school boards in the spotlight and the news, more specifically because they didn't address it, I think, in the proper way that you are doing. And so I'm really grateful the opportunities you've afforded this community and San Angelo to participate in this process. So what I did 3 months ago was started the petition that's been referenced a couple of times. I closed that petition last night. That petition is 600 pages long with 13,850 signatures. Regardless of the people or individuals, geographic location that have signed this, which has been a point of contention or concern, nonetheless, 13,000 signatures is quite a lot of individuals across the United States and abroad that have the same concern that I do, okay? So I didn't want to obviously kill a couple of trees to print that off and provide that to you, so that'll be distributed electronically. In addition to a mass of public comments and statements that have been gathered, which I will also be submitting tonight. A lot of those petitions and comments that have come across from us have been we've tried to be characterized as extremists. We have been labeled certain things, even in this very room, as associations with terroristic organizations, like Antifa and Black Lives Matter. I think even in this room I was also compared to Satan. But nonetheless, we felt the need to disassociate ourselves from those types of characterizations or those associations. So recently we have all collectively come together and formed the San Angelo Equity Alliance. And we took great motivation from the engaging equity process that the SAISD had created. So equity, for those of you that don't know, is the quality of being fair and impartial. And I think that name was chosen very appropriately whenever this program was developed and the ability to address this topic. So once again tonight, instead of hearing me kind of reiterate a lot of things that you've heard me say for the past few months, I want to share some comments from individuals that were not able to be here, in addition to some individuals that are here and present but have a very real fear of public speaking. So this is a comment on behalf of Amy, who's in the back of the room. My name is Amy Wilkes. I'm a former Lee student and mother of three. Two of my three kids attended Lee. I'm also born and raised in San Angelo and a homeowner. I can't say anything from a historical perspective that hasn't already been eloquently said by the members of the San Angelo Equity Alliance. But I can ask you to look at this issue from a spiritual perspective. This is 2020, the year of clear vision. It is the chance to reflect on old ways and the thought processes of the past and choose to make changes and to make things right. I, like many, were ignorant to the implications behind the meaning of the name of a school. In fact, I honestly did not pay much attention until I started to learn that much of what was taught in our history books is a version that plays down the actual events, a version that tries to romanticize true history. So now, this is the time for closure, healing, and empathy. This kind of history belongs in museums, not as a slap in the face and as a reminder of painful past. Thank you. An additional statement I want to read is from an individual who's actually serving our country in the active military. She could not be here. My name is Sandy. I'm a 33-year-old San Angelo resident, a Lakeview High School alumni, 2015 Standard Times 20 under 40 award participant, a local homeowner, taxpayer, registered absentee voter, and an active duty member of the armed forces for the past 15 years. I love San Angelo. I love the warmth of the community. I love the school employees, the local businesses, government, community leaders, and the police department. I always thought of San Angelo as a sweet and comfortable city to live in. Service members are often put into uncomfortable places globally, like Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, and off the coast of hostile nations. I've been in some uncomfortable places in the Middle East, places I never want my child to be or be raised in. Places that are corrupt and horribly racist and sexist. Do I think America is racist? No. Do I think America is the greatest nation in the world? Absolutely. I thank God every day that American children are being educated in safe schools with amazing teachers that represent American values. Socially, though, we could all use some growth. We can do better in order to have more respectable communities that treat all Americans equally. Quite frankly, we are better than our past. We fought those wars, learned from those lessons, lived through and read about civil rights, passed numerous amendments, and evolved into a powerful, successful, uncensored, unmatched, free-thinking 50-state nation. I'm thinking about how to grow in mighty San Angelo and be a part of current social changes in the country. We can show everyone how much we love our citizens if we prove we are willing to embrace diversity and let go of a name that thousands of community members are not comfortable with. Not because we are trying to erase the past and the story of the Civil War, but because we need to teach it differently and more accurately. I don't want anyone to have a negative impression or feel uncomfortable in this beautiful town. I don't want people enrolling their children into a junior high to think San Angelo cares more about the Confederacy of 1862, honoring a Virginian general on the losing side of the war, than their own citizens, than their own future and their own children. The residents of San Angelo are diverse. The military members stationed at Goodfellow are diverse. ASU students are diverse. Rodeo workers, oil workers, and general visitors are diverse. We're simply
Ramon?
raising 21st century into the nation divided.
Mr. Ramon, could you wrap up your comments?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So let's name the school after what we are proud of. Thank you for listening. Thank you to whoever has read my statement. I'm sorry I couldn't deliver this in person. I'm currently stationed overseas defending the Constitution and protecting the American rights to assemble, petition, and deliver free speeches, and I'm excited for the progress. Hopefully we end on the right side of history. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next, we have Mr. Hurd, Devin Hurd. Thank you for being here, Mr. Hurd.
Thank you for having me. Good evening. My name is Devin Hurd. I'm father of a Robert E. Lee Middle School student. I've come here to support my wife and daughter when they have been publicly commenting over the past couple months. I realize my silent support has been a disservice to my family and the children under their current representation. I'm not a native of San Angelo. I'm on active duty status here in San Angelo. I own a house here and I plan to retire here because I love this city so much. My father was a soldier as well. We moved all around the country. All the schools I attended were named after geographic points and neighborhoods, except for one, Daly Elementary. It was named after Captain James E. Daly, Jr., a local police officer who died in the line of duty. Now, when I entered high school, we as students had an opportunity to vote for the name and mascot. My school was transitioning from a freshman campus to a four-year high school. Brandon, the school, gave me an additional sense of pride. My two older siblings attended the building as a freshman. Their personal history was not erased in transition. Their athletic records are still recorded, and neither sibling is confused about their achievements as ninth graders, even though the building is now Parker Heights High School. As an outsider, the name of the school sticks out like a sore thumb. Remember, Goodfellow Air Force Base, Angelo State University, and other national companies bring their employees and students to the city. Public school named after a Confederate general is a stain on the community. Glorification of traitor and oppressor is a red flag to anyone who is a true patriot, anyone who truly believes in liberty and justice for all. My daughter started school at Austin Elementary. She asked my wife who Stephen F. Austin was. This year, as she prepared to go to 6th grade, she asked my wife who Robert E. Lee was. She then innocently asked, why would teachers name a school after someone who would leave their country so he could fight to keep slaves? That is wrong. If an 11-year-old is that disgusted with only the fundamentals knowledge of Robert E. Lee transgressions, why aren't we collectively more upset as well-educated adults? Dismantling glorification of traitor to our nation is the most American thing I can do. Rebuking the representation of children under terrorist name is the most American thing I can do. Every patriot should be advocating against the idolization of the Confederacy. We must rename and rebrand Robert E. Lee Middle School. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Hurd, and thank you for your service. Our next speaker is Ms. Yancey, Sharon Yancey. Just in case they're downstairs, we'll give them a chance to. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Yancey, for being here. Sorry we made you walk the stairs. Catch your breath and take your time.
Hi, I'm Sharon Yancey. Thank you for allowing us to speak tonight. I am a retired teacher from San Angelo and proud of that. I was a student at Robert E. Lee Middle School, then known as Robert E. Lee Junior High, and my kids were also students there. I do not believe that the name of the school should be changed. I know that there are schools, streets, and parks all over our country that bear the names of men and women who shaped our nation from the beginning. Excuse me. History has not always shown that mankind is fair or doesn't always do the honorable thing, but this is 2020. It's not 100 plus years ago. I think that our focus and our funds should be going toward our facilities, our teachers and their resources. I think that's the way that we protect our future, ensure that things are done in the right way. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those comments. We appreciate you being here. Okay. Okay. They're all downstairs? Well, I know Miss Balcom's next, and I can see her. So then, correct. Okay, the next three are Miss Spears, Mr. Luce, and Clint G. But before that, we'll hear from Janice Balcom. Thank you, Miss Balcom, for being here.
I just want to take a minute and tell y'all, last week I stayed to see the facilities update, and kudos to y'all for getting central bathrooms and a concession stand. I stayed to purposely see that, and thank you for allocating those funds because since I was a student there, it's needed it. But thank y'all for doing that. It was amazing to see what all that they had done there. So. We're not doing a history lesson. Y'all have heard every gamut of everything there is about all of this. What I said last week is, again, to consider with funds, allocations. Over half of our schools are named for someone, and there's going to be someone that's going to have a problem with some of those names, and it's going to be never ending, I'm afraid. We are very passionate people. You know, like Mr. Ramon said about targeting and names and stuff. I am in the folks group that is wanting not to change the name, and so we have also been targeted and things have been said. And we're better than that. We should be better than that. We should be Americans to where we can hear both sides. And as I said last week, I do not envy you, and I wish we could take it off of your hands and put it on the ballot, but we can't. But I try to be open-minded to the point. I visited with about 20 people, and the comment was, well, you can't see the forest for the trees. And, you know, they can't see the trees for the forest. And it's the same thing going back and forth. And one side is not going to come to the other, and the other is not going to come to that side either. It's just not going to happen. So with that said, I know it is a possibility that y'all may decide to table your vote. And I am here to urge you to not do that, because we need to get on. We need to move on. We need to mend ourselves. We need to become the people that we should be becoming and accept whatever decision you make for whichever format, and be okay with that and not be controversial continuously and targeting and name calling and all of that. We need to accept your decision as fact, move on from there, and you know, if it be that you do change the name, then we have to look at funds, allocations, but, you know, it is so important for our facilities to be updated and things of that nature that have just gone awry that we haven't done anything for. And I just wish everybody would be more passionate about that than they will about a name. Because as I was told from a group that I talked to, it's really not about the name. It is about the academics and what the children are taught. And I thought we agree on something, because I said that's exactly the way we feel. We don't want to change the name. We need to be focusing on the academics. And their comment was, it's not the same thing. And I knew right then and there it did not matter what I said, because we're not going to be on the same page. So I appreciate your service. I urge you to make that hard decision, and let's move forward and go from here.
Thank you, Ms. Baucom, for those comments. Okay, I think the next one is Ms. Spears. Thank you for being here, Ms. Spears.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody.
Ms. Spears, you might move the mic a little bit closer to you, or get closer to it. So, yeah, because that way we'll get it on the recording.
All
Thank
right.
you.
I'm Shirley Spears, and I'm here again representing the San Angelo NAACP. Through our process, when we were asked by a parent of a Lee student, Mr. Jesse Ramon, to support his petition to change the name of Lee School, we took a vote, which is our constitutional duty in our organization. The decision was made that we would support it. We did further research and determined that there are a lot of different Confederate names on streets, in particular the county and other things, and the elementary school for John Reagan. So we have been pushing to support Mr. Ramon's petition while also drawing attention to John Reagan Elementary. As the oldest civil rights organization in the country, these are concerns and issues that we have been fighting since 1909. And here in San Angelo, we have concerns that we've been serving the public for 75 years. It is difficult for a lot of people who have experienced the life here in San Angelo as it has been without controversy. It is difficult sometimes to see the other side. As has been mentioned this evening, the request to change the name, or for the board to consider the name changes, has now taken on a whole different approach. People are being personally attacked. their families are being personally attacked, organizations that they're involved with, their employment status is being questioned. All of these things are being questioned because some people want to change the name and some people don't. I want to remind everyone that we're not here to attack anyone personally. The board has been elected to make those types of decisions, and they have afforded us an opportunity to voice our opinion, which they didn't have to do. They've done that. We have an opportunity to say what we want to say. You all are going to make the decision, and then we will go forward with that decision. The training and educational aspects of the history of America cannot be told without telling the story of every group that helped to build this country. The true story. And that is what we have at issue, is that the Confederacy has been taken to be some wonderful, glorious experience for soldiers, and a lot of discussions and half-truths have been told about what really happened, or even why we had a civil war. So those of you who cannot understand that, we ask that you would at least give some thought to being able to understand why we want the true history told, the true story told, so that everyone can be acknowledged, so that everyone can have an opportunity to feel that they are at the table and have a voice at the table. It is very difficult for me to hear that whoever was at the table in 1949, when we decided to name the school after Robert Lee, that they were representing the entire community. And it is very difficult for me, as an African American woman, of my age in particular, to hear that whoever was not at the table in 1949, too bad. And I want to encourage all of you, not just because of what's going on politically in the country, but because the attitudes, the perspectives, the points of views of people have changed since 1949. And fortunately for me, there are more of us at the table with a voice. So I hope and I know that you will do the right thing for this community, because it is important for us to not be divided, and all of the attempts that have started to divide us, personal attacks, as I mentioned earlier, attacks on people's employers, that's just absolutely ridiculous. We're talking about changing the name of two schools that doesn't have anything to do with you on a personal basis. So again, we want you to do the right thing. You have been elected to make the hard decisions, and we trust that you will do what is best for the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Spears. Next, we have Mr. Luce, John Luce. Thank you for being here. Oh, never mind, I hadn't seen him yet. Okay, so we'll move forward to Clint G. Clint, could you, when you get to the mic, would you let us know your last name as well? Thank you. Thanks for being here.
As this will be televised, I will not provide my last name. My 11-year-old at Lee Junior High is horrified that she'll be singled out. We had to contact the principal over the ridiculousness of the rules that are there, which you all set. I'm not exactly sure who or which one of you did, but y'all set them. She's been singled out now by the coach there. I would invite any one of you to Central Bobcat Stadium and run in 108-degree weather with a mask on your face. I can do it. I'm almost 50 years old. She can't. Doesn't need to. You guys setting those rules are ridiculous. How are your rules different than a restaurant? Any restaurant in town. Has any of you seen a video of the spray of a cough? If this virus is so deadly, every single one of us would be infected with COVID in San Angelo, Texas, period. But we can sit at a table because it's a necessary business in America? It's not. Grocery store is. Farming is. Those kinds of things. The other thing is this girl is 4'5" and weighs 65 pounds. She's tiny. She has to carry a 35-pound backpack because you guys will not issue lockers at Lee Junior High School. Up and down the stairs, 8 hours in a day. All of you again, I'd be happy to meet you there, but I can't go into Lee Junior High School because of COVID. Guys, this is ridiculous. Right now, there's a fight going on in Austin, Texas by Mayor Adler and the CEO of St. David's, because Mayor Adler is a Democratic mayor and he wants everybody to be on the same sheet. I want you to report the same devastation of COVID that we're all going to do, and I need you to be on the same page. His name is David Huffstetler. You can look it up. He said no and published the email instead. Guys, this is not a smart virus. It doesn't get to the threshold of Henry's Diner down here on Sherwood Way and say, hold up, boys, we can't go in here. This is a restaurant, not a school. The school, they have to sit 3 chairs apart. They can't look at each other because it's rude to stare while you're eating. If none of you think this is ridiculous, then you all don't need to be sitting here in these chairs. Period. Now, as far as anything else goes, I want to point out some things to y'all. Headache, fever, dry cough, chills, fatigue, shortness of breath, sore throat, muscle ache, loss of taste or smell, congestion, runny nose, nausea, diarrhea. I don't even know what that is. Dandruff, itches, diaper rash, poison ivy rash, frostbite, tense foot, unemployment, bankruptcy. These are all symptoms of COVID. 3 nurses here at Shannon Hospital tested. They sent 10 tests. I've known one girl for 44 years. I'll be 50 in January if that ages me at all. 44 years I've known her for my whole life. They sent 3 tests in for this COVID testing. They tested them on random things like Vaseline, saline, things like that. 8 of those 10 tests came back positive. This is happening right here in San Angelo. Your rules don't change when the kids leave the school. They have them all bunched up outside. I know this because I pick her up every single day. So the rules apply at lunch, but they do not apply when they get out of school. The teachers, they're under their watchful eye out there. They want to make sure they're not kidnapped. This is ridiculous. You guys put yourselves through the same crap that you're putting these kids through. I'll meet you at Central High School Stadium. It's right here. I'll meet you there on Saturday morning. Whoever. Show of hands. Who's ready? You? You? Let's run with a mask on for a mile and see which one of y'all can make it. I can do it. Back to the people that want to change this name of the school. You guys are barking up the wrong tree. I went to Lee Junior High in 1983. Mr. Westbrook was my assistant principal. That man, back when corporal punishment was a thing and was legal, gave me licks. I thank you for that, sir. I probably wouldn't be the man without you. To these days, that was almost 40 years ago, 37 years ago. I've got friends that are black, good friends. One of them is black as night. You ask him if he feels oppressed by Lee Junior High's name, his answer is no. You know why? Because he makes $250,000 a year because of his education. If you guys want to change history, it's ridiculous. You're starting in the wrong place. You're in San Angelo, Texas. We got a population, we just reached 100,000 people. About. When I was here growing up, there was 82,000 people. We're the biggest town without an interstate. You guys want to change some names? Go back and change the money. Ben Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, all slave owners. You guys may not know this, but the very first slave owner in America was black.
Sir,
Did y'all know that?
Sir, we've limited everyone else to 5 or 6 minutes.
Sure.
So
I'm going to get on this. You guys really want to worry about black and brown people being killed? Start with abortion clinics. There's 40 million babies a year that are killed. You guys should be focusing on the grades and be ashamed of yourselves. You want kids to achieve A's? Your teachers can't even achieve B's or C's in your grades. Thank you, Mr. Serviceman back there, because without you and every serviceman on the planet, we wouldn't be allowed to have free speech in America. You guys get your facts straight. Also, read the Bible. There's horror stories in there that would blow any rated R movie away on HBO. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Miss Collier, Leah Collier. So we have Leah Collier, Amy Wilkes, maybe, and Lana Primo are all downstairs, possibly. Okay. Okay. So, Miss Collier, thank you for being here.
Stuck on my glasses. All right. Thank you once again for your time. Thanks for letting me speak. My name is Leah Collier, and I'm a resident of San Angelo. I came here 15 years ago with the Air Force, and I liked it so much I stayed. I married into a family of past and present Lee students, and today I speak on their behalf. Today I would like to address one of the common arguments I hear against renaming the school. I hear that changing the name of a school will somehow erase the history of the person it was named after. As a lifelong student of history, this idea saddens and frustrates me. As I said earlier, I'm a transplant. I'm here in San Angelo by choice. I'm originally from Akron, Ohio. It's a proud city with a rich history. It's a throwback to the days when American manufacturing ruled the world. You've probably heard such names as Firestone, Goodyear, Goodrich, Uniroyal, and General Tire. Many schools in Akron used to bear the names of these companies, their former CEOs and inventors and scientists in the rubber industry. For the last 15 years, however, the school system there has undertaken a massive modernization project. Schools are being torn down, consolidated, rebuilt, or renamed, and yet the history of their past namesakes persists. Goodyear Middle School no longer exists. It was rebuilt and renamed years ago. It's now called East Community Learning Center. Despite the change, you can still go downtown here in San Angelo and buy a set of Goodyear tires at the Goodyear store. You'll still see the Goodyear blimp hanging over football stadiums on the big game day. Changing the school's name did not erase Charles Goodyear's accomplishment. Why do I bring this up? Robert E. Lee is not in any danger of being erased from history if we change the name of the school. He was the commander of the entire Confederate States Army during a war that was fought over the worst atrocity in our American story, chattel slavery. And he was even more famous for ending up on the wrong side. There are national parks, national historic preserves, state parks, history centers, and museums dedicated to the preservation of Civil War history. My father is a huge Civil War buff. Our family vacations were spent visiting places like Gettysburg National Military Park, where the Civil War Trust has taken great care to preserve our history. Lee's own property eventually became Arlington National Cemetery. The largest Civil War museum west of the Mississippi is right up the road outside of Fort Worth. I couldn't give you an exact number of books out there specifically about Robert E. Lee, but I stopped counting at 200 when I searched for that on Goodreads. The professionals tasked with preserving our history have taken great care to make sure that we never forget who Robert E. Lee was, the man who chose to fight for that despicable institution of chattel slavery. We can and should choose a name that better suits our way of life here in San Angelo. A name that doesn't invoke the darkest periods in our history. A name that isn't associated with the Jim Crow era trend of bestowing honors on Confederates just to spite a certain segment of the population. I've stayed in San Angelo because this community is full of kind, compassionate people with good hearts. This is one small gesture we can undertake to show everyone how amazing and full of empathy we truly are. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Collier, for your comments. I was told Ms. Wilkes is not still here, so we'll move forward to Ms. Primo. Thank you, Ms. Primo, for being here.
Hello, and thank you for having us yet again to come talk to you about changing the name of Lee. Again, I've been here 4 times previously to talk to you, and I've been to the summit meetings with Dr. Orr. You've heard the history, you've heard the feelings, you've heard the facts. I'm not going to reiterate any of that tonight. We've heard it all. Somebody at one of the meetings said there's no right side or wrong side of history, and I initially wanted to disagree with that statement because I thought, well, there's an awful lot of people in this world that have died at the hands of someone that had power and abused it. But I talked to one of our professors that's been up here, and he said, well, objectively, we should look at history. We should say, this is what happened. I feel like what's happening here within San Angelo is that we're getting a history that is being cherry-picked. People are letting themselves gloss over what they want to honor. I believe, I believe that it's time that we let this matter rest and vote to remove the name. You obviously know how diverse it is, how it is not representative of inclusivity of the people in our town, the children in our schools. And I want you to vote not thinking of being on the right side or wrong side of history necessarily, but on a side of humanity that you can feel that you can rest with. And after hearing from our community members that care about this, I don't see how you could vote any other way but to remove the name. Thank you again for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Primo. We appreciate your comments. Next up is Donald Pope. So we'll give him some time to get up from downstairs. Also have Angela Haywood and Lilan McClellan-Thee downstairs, possibly. So we'll ask those to come up collectively. Thank you, Mr. Pope, for being here.
My name is Donald Pope. Kind of got frustrated about some of the stuff I heard tonight. But I'm a resident here of San Angelo, a U.S. Army vet, since some people hold those in high esteem. But this name change, this got to be done. It's 2020 still, and that's been brought up. And why are we still going through this? I have no idea. I am kind of frustrated. I'm upset because people think General Lee was so great. If he was so great, for who? It wasn't for all. And let me give you one little experience about Lee Junior High when I was going there. Some of the white kids, not all, no more than here, like I say here, thought they wanted to form a clan. Bring in the KKK. They thought that'd be funny. Oh, that didn't happen. There was a 1 or 2 skirmishes on that. Then it came to almost a big blows at lunchtime one day. And of course, I was in the front. I wouldn't have it. It's like I'm up here right now. I'm not happy. I'm tired of it. People got to get over yourselves. That history, what you done, talking about he's so great. Like I said, maybe to who? One side? Wasn't nobody like me saying he was so great. He didn't do my people any favors. Any brown people, any Hispanics, because the Hispanics was on our side during the fight because they was being discriminated against too. Not all teachers at Lee was bad, not all people in San Angelo are bad. But this got to change. This got to change right now. And whoever dispersed Shirley, you know, talking about everybody taking their hoods off. Everybody didn't wear hoods. Black people didn't wear hoods. It was only the Klan. And who was the member of the Klan? White people. And the reason they came up with these names, these statues, try to keep us subservient and intimidate and scare. Those days are gone. Those days are gone. And they ain't never coming back. So we need to make these changes, do the right thing. That's all it is to discuss. It really shouldn't even be a discussion. Do the right thing, change the name, and then we can move on to other things, for the education. Talk about that. And that'd be a good thing to do. You go steps, the name got to go. That's all I got to say right now because I am upset. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Pope. Our next speaker is Angela Haywood. Ms. Haywood, thank you for being here.
Good evening, Mr. Lehman and board members. I want to thank you for allowing me to speak to you this evening on this particular issue. I know both sides are very passionate about how they feel about the changing of the name or letting it stay the same. However, I'm not one of those people. I am a native Texan. I was born and raised here in San Angelo, and I went to Lee Junior High, as have every family member that preceded me, my siblings, my nieces and nephews. And the treatment that was received from the children, some of the parents, some of the teachers that were in charge over at Lee when I went, from what I'm hearing from my nieces and nephews, my great nieces and nephews, is still the same. You would think that General Lee is alive and well and is living over at Lee Junior High. Now, some of you may not believe that, but when I went to school, this is my yearbook. When I graduated, this is my yearbook. I'm pointing it out for you to see that in 1992, 93, this is the cover of the yearbook. It has the rebel flag on it. So now you tell me, how can I or my siblings feel very proud or be proud of attending a school that is named after someone who didn't particularly care for people of color, who owned them? And some people said that the first person to own slaves were black people. Well, you know, I beg to differ on that particular issue, because I have researched my history, my family history, and we go all the way back to the Trail of Tears. We can go back even further than that, and I have, to the Buffalo Soldiers, because my family history is ingrained here in the state of Texas, Mexico, and Florida and other places. And those are just the ones that I can name off the top of my head. it's not fair that our children have to contend with a school, number one, that is not academically up to par where it should be with the rest of the country. That's number one. That's first and foremost. But number two, they shouldn't have to be ashamed or even scared to go to a school that waves the rebel flag in their face. We see it time and time again. You ask us to get over slavery and what has happened in the past, but how can we when it's constantly in our face? Every day, you look at the street signs, you look at buildings, you look at highways, it's all there. How can we get over something when you're constantly putting it in our face? Now, I don't profess to be a Black Lives Matter person. I don't profess to be Antifa or anything else because I'm not for all of that. I was raised right here in San Angelo. We have values just like you do. I have worked for the past 25 years working with both sides of the aisle, coming to the common ground and the common good for all people. And that is what we are asking for the other side and for you, the board members, to come to a common ground between both parties and teach the full history and not part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Haywood, for your comments. We only have 3 more, so we're, although we had a couple that we skipped, so we'll move back to those. Ms. McClellan-Thee, Willie Flores, and Joe Hyde are the final 3 that I have signed up. Thank you, Ms. Thee, for being here.
Thank you, Board, for giving us this opportunity. My name is Lyle Lynn McClellan-Thee. I'm a native San Angeloan and also a former student of Robert E. Lee Junior High. Junior high back then, and I won't even do the math to say how long ago that was. Let me just start off by saying that the San Angelo Independent School District is funded by taxpayer dollars, and regardless of the source of those dollars, be it local, state, or federal, it is all taxpayer dollars, so it comes out of our pockets. And you as a school board are charged to be good stewards of that very limited resource. And one of the key functions of the board of directors, according to the SAISD board policy manual under the chapter Mandatory Powers and Duties, is to provide oversight regarding student academic achievement and strategic leadership for maximizing student performance. Now, however, according to the Texas Education Agency website, which is txschools.gov, and then under the Schools tab, for the year 2018-2019 school year, of our 23 campuses listed on this site, there are 17 elementary school campuses. 4 are graded F, 2 are graded D, 7 are graded C, 2 are graded B, and 2 are graded A. Of our 3 middle schools, they have grades of C, D, and F. And Lee is represented with that D grade. Our 2 high schools are both graded B. Now, the freshman campus evidently, the former Edison Junior High is evidently lumped into those grades. It's not broken out separately in this list. And Carver Alternative Learning Center is listed, but it's not ranked, so for information purposes. On the website schooldigger.com, for the year 2019, SAISD was ranked 765th of 971 Texas school districts. That just means that SAISD was just better than just 21% of the Texas districts. And this is not a new problem. For 2018, SAISD was ranked better than just 28% of Texas school districts. In 2017, better than 38%. So every year we have declined some consistently from 2017. Now, according to the Education Code, Chapter 25, parents have the right to request assignments to or transfers from campuses, and also to file objections to campus assignments made by the district. In other words, if you are bound to go to a certain school because of where you live, and that school is failing or not performing up to the standard that you think it should, which this information is public knowledge, it's easy to look up, you have the right to petition you, the school board, for a transfer. So there's been a lot of talk, and this issue about changing the name of Robert E. Lee came up. And the first, the reasoning was, well, you know, we're concerned about our children's education. And that's admirable. As a parent, that's one of your most important responsibilities, is the education of your children. So I do not understand why there's not more outcry about the academics rather than the name of the school. As far as the cost of a name change, according to a Freedom of Information request, SAISD provided an estimate of around $30,000 just to change the name of Robert E. Lee. I actually think that that's low. I think that the actual expense will be higher because other school districts that have done something along this, that have changed the name of their campus, they spend in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I would expect our figure to come in much higher should this action be taken. And another campus, Reagan, has already been mentioned and been targeted for a name change. So multiply the figure by at least 2 and probably more. And I want to mention another thing in the current events that we're facing. Hopefully you've heard about the Reimagine the Alamo project, that battle going on in San Antonio. Well, that also, in addition, the way that this event has evolved, that also has developed into racial overtones. So if that battle in San Antonio is successful to reimagine the Alamo, well then, isn't it feasible that names associated with Texas history will be considered offensive? And we have several campuses that would fall into that category too. So again, we're looking at more expense. Should Robert E. Lee be deemed to be changed? This is a lot to think about, and as a board, it is your responsibility. It does fall on your shoulders as far as naming of the school board. But I would say that our community, I mean, we have academic challenges here. We see that in black and white. Our children do deserve a quality education, and that should be the focus of every parent in this district. I say that our community can be better served by money and SAISD staff resources that we've had to use to hold these meetings in this process. Our community can be better served by those resources and money being applied toward things to achieve these academic goals in which we're falling short. I don't know, such as targeted tutoring, you know, give these students extra attention that need more help. Saturday classes.
Ms. Thee, could you wrap up your comments, please?
Yes, sir. I say it would be worthwhile to ask current classroom teachers and retired teachers from their vast knowledge for ideas, creative ways to address our academic challenges rather than spending the expense on changing the name of Robert E. Lee. Thank you for your time.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for your comments. Our next speaker is Mr. Flores. Is Mr. Flores available? Thank you for being here, Mr. Flores.
Hi, guys. Hey, I want to thank you for your service. I wouldn't want anybody to make this decision. It's going to be a tough one. But as for the name change, I feel both sides of the aisle, you know. I know he was a bad guy or whatever, and in some eyes he was a good guy, but in my eyes, he was just a man that died 150 years ago. My kids go to John H. Reagan Elementary, and they don't go to school there because John H. Reagan was a slave owner. They don't even know who John H. Reagan is, you know, and they don't care. The only thing they do, they go to school there, And if they don't make straight A's, they get in trouble. That's the bottom line, you know. I'd rather this money that's going to be used to change the name, if they do decide to change the name, bring the school grade up, you know. Put it back into the education of the kids. Let's make the kids smarter. Let's send these kids to college and all that stuff instead of crying about a name, you know. And I know it probably hurts both sides or whatever, but to me, this guy died 150 years ago. And these guys are talking like he's still there behind the principal's desk, you know, and he's not. He's dead. He's got no control over what happens in the future. He's been gone. But if you keep letting him, he's going to be there. That hatred in your heart's going to be there, you know, and that's bad. You guys need to love, you know, and not hate. This is like, y'all are bringing racism back. It's just, I can't process it in my head. The other day that storm come through, you know, and there's a lot of homeless people under the Chadburn Street Bridge in the rain and stuff. Nobody helping them. Why don't we focus on that, you know? I just can't see it. Fighting over a name, you know, and the guy's dead. But the way you guys talk about him, he's still right here in this room today. You know? I'd rather the money be spent on educating my kids, our kids, you know, making them smarter, instead of putting in their head that there was racism there was a racism 150 years ago, and there's still some today, because you've got people that are still racist. Whether it be black, white, brown, you've got them, you know? And we can't control that. What we can control is how we raise our kids, and that's the bottom line, you know? I'd rather spend this money on our kids' education and bring it up from a D to an A at Lee Junior High. You know, not worry about the name on the building, because the name on the building doesn't have anything to do with what's in the kid's heart. You know, so you guys decide whatever. And I'll put $100 on Bill Dindal to outrun that guy with a mask on at the Bobcat Stadium if he's still out there. Okay? Let's go Bobcats. Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Willie. A little levity never hurt, you know, so. We had one gentleman that was going to speak later, Rebel. I know I've got Joe. Rebel passed. Mrs. Wilkes, okay. So the last one I have signed up is Joe Hyde. Thanks, Mr. Hyde, for being here. Your patience. Thank you.
I hope this thing's tall enough. Anyway, I rise today in support of maintaining the name Robert E. Lee Middle School. And I do this after much thought because my actions today will likely cost me both personally and professionally. Indeed, I've already been targeted. It is not popular to take a stand for dead Confederates in this toxic political environment. I certainly become unemployable, and I risk my own business interest and revenue for standing up to the tyranny of the mob. Let me tell you why I feel compelled to fall on the sword. I believe this movement to change the name of Robert E. Lee Middle School isn't really about dead Confederates. It's instead about subjugating an entire class of people, if you will, to the whims of a radical, progressive ideology and agenda, a divisive and hateful one. And I choose my words very carefully here, an agenda to tell half or more of this community that people like me are dirty, unclean, and nasty. For if you support tradition or Confederate school names, certainly you are a racist. I didn't understand this ideology of what is happening in our country until this summer. I stood guard in front of the statue of another former Confederate general. His name was Lawrence Sullivan Ross, in the academic square at Texas A&M University in College Station. While there, the current quarterback of the Aggie football team, Kellen Mond, declared to me that if I am colorblind, if I don't see Mr. Mond's blackness, I am a racist. So much for everything my generation learned about getting along and working together as American, regardless of skin color or class. And Kellen Mond went on. He said that because I am white, I am the recipient of some sort of white privilege. And the only way for me to atone for my sin of being born white was to agree completely with his political points of view and subjugate myself to his ideology of anti-racism. And even should I decide to subjugate myself to his own ideology, I will remain a racist anyway, but at least I am working on not being a racist. This toxic ideology comes from a collection of recent books brought forth by our universities that allege white fragility and white privilege. Or basically, they call me a racist based on a moving scale of what is and is not racist. I think it's a quack ideology where adherents defined and redefined what hate is and what racism is to brand with scarlet letters those who disagree with their political point of view, so that those that don't disagree with me don't have to debate their crazy ideas with me in the public square. In short, this ideology is a stepping stone in our country to totalitarianism, I believe. The ideology of this white fragility, anti-racism, I believe also is anti-Christian, anti-God, and doesn't really know Jesus. First, the ideology assumes there is a collective guilt. It maintains I am guilty for actions taken by my ancestors 160 years ago. I am guilty for the actions anyone with my same skin color has committed since, and I am guilty of the sins of all white people in my community today, to include those who don't want to rename schools. Jesus didn't teach collective guilt. When I die and stand before the pearly gates of heaven trying to gain admission, I'm not going to have to account for the sins of you or anyone else's sins in generations past. I and I alone are responsible for my own sins, not yours, not anyone else's, and certainly not some Confederate general who's dead. Second, the ideology of anti-racism and white fragility offers no avenue for repentance or forgiveness. It is a continuing process. The ideologues say it's kind of like, sort of like what Marxism is. You can never be perfect enough to not be a racist. Apologies don't matter. You're scum forever, subjugated to the whims of the leaders of the anti-racism ideology who aren't white. It matters not only because to them, I'm still that dirty, nasty white guy, and I'm middle-aged to boot. They probably hope people like me die soon enough so they can carry on their agenda without my interference. Third, because there is no repentance or forgiveness, there will never be any kind of redemption, and with no redemption, there is absolutely no incentive for me to do a darn thing to placate any of them, except, of course, like Chamberlain did for Hitler, perhaps I can appease them by renaming my middle school, and maybe they won't burn down my city, or assault me, or destroy my country. But as Chamberlain soon learned, there's no appeasing them, and this anti-racism ideology certainly remains, to me, anti-Christian, because it refuses to take into the concept redemption. I'm a third-generation combat veteran from a long line of Southern Georgian men who have defended this country throughout the ages. My father and my great-great-grandfather both gave their lives for their country. I was lucky enough to have escaped that fate. Let me tell you about my great-great-grandfather, Henry Hyde, from Noonan, Georgia. Henry had 9 children. All but one were boys. He was a hardscrabble man who managed to save up enough money to purchase just 200 acres on the western Georgia frontier in 1847. He and his family farmed the land. They didn't have enough money or land assets to own slaves. His boys provided the labor. By the time the Civil War came along, all but one of the boys, the youngest, who was 9 years old at the time, were either conscripted or they volunteered to join the Confederate States Army. They weren't fighting for slavery. They didn't have any benefit for that. And to quote Mississippi Delta historian Shelby Foote, who looked into the motivations of young men who joined the Confederate States Army, perhaps they were fighting the Yankees because y'all are down here. Or maybe, like was exposed in the movie starring Nicole Kidman, Cold Mountain, young men were conscripted or faced a lynch mob if they didn't join the CSA. I don't know. But by 1864, the Confederate States Army was desperate for men. They came to Henry and they said, we're going to have to conscript your 12-year-old boy. And he said, you can't take my young son. I'll go in his place. And what happened after that was old Henry was captured in Decatur, Alabama during a battle trying to stop William Tecumseh Sherman from reaching Atlanta. He was transported as a POW up to Camp Douglas in Chicago, where he stood out in the cold and was hosed down, and eventually he died of pneumonia He's buried in a mass grave up there. A lot of us share have this shared history of what happened during the Civil War, because the Civil War impacted everyone that lived here. Everyone that lived here.
Joe, could you wrap up your comments, please?
Anyway, I feel like this renaming of schools is to shame us for our history, and I don't want that to happen. I also believe that Robert E. Lee has historical ties to this area. For example, he was the commander, I believe, the 10th Cavalry for the U.S. Army. He protected this frontier, and he allowed settlements like Schulenburg and Hallettsville and New Braunfels, places like that where the German robber barons were selling land to the German immigrants. He allowed them to settle Texas. He has a historical ties to this area. He camped up there by Water Valley at camp, they call it Camp Concho or Camp Johnson. He rode out of Fort Chadbourne. Anyway, I wanted to just let you know, I don't want to give an inch, and this is why. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hyde, for your comments. I think that covers items not on our agenda. What I'm going to do, in light of a couple of people have been waiting an extended period of time to speak, I'm going to skip reports and move immediately to consent items A through F. Do we have a motion to approve items A through F?
Move to approve consent items A through F.
Yeah, well, I'm going to let him speak as part of the agenda item, just like we normally would.
Second.
So we have a motion from Mr. Parker and a second from Dr. Kingman. Our consent items are considered donations. Our donations are listed up there. We had a pretty significant donation from the Crouch family. We appreciate them. Our item B is consider approval of the quarterly investment report. Item C is to consider superintendent's recommendations for personnel. Dr. Gomez provided that for us at our pre-agenda meeting. Item D is to consider extracurricular status for 4-H organizations and adjunct faculty agreement of Texas A&M Agri-Life Extension Service for Tom Green County. Item E is to consider approval of TEA asynchronous, that's easy for me to say, instructional plan. And item F is to consider TASB board policy update 115. Does anybody need to remove any of these items as a board member? If not, we do have someone signed up for public comment. And which item would that be on of that list, ma'am? Item E. So would you please come forward? Again, thank you for your patience. And be sure and let everybody know your name when you get to the microphone. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm real short. Hello, my name is Sarah Negavetich, and I have 2 children in the SAISD schools. Like many parents, I enrolled my children in the virtual academy to start the school year. I felt comfortable doing so because the district assured us that students in the virtual academy would receive the same quality education as those students opting for in-person instruction, claiming that Edgenuity was a research-based platform aligned to state standards. Unfortunately, we found the exact opposite. The research referenced on the SAISD website and provided by Edgenuity amounts to little more than marketing material, highlighting selective results that only give part of the story. Further, though they claim to be TEKS aligned, we found that was only the case for courses taught in 6th grade and above. The curriculum and instruction team denied that the curriculum wasn't aligned and only grudgingly admitted the truth when we put the physical proof in front of them. This does not instill very much faith in the information coming from our administration. When it comes to in-person instruction, teachers face another set of problems. With almost no training prior to starting the school year, our teachers had to figure out how to transfer their coursework to the Schoology platform. As a substitute teacher, I've seen the issues that teachers face in loading their material and getting it to work properly. I've also heard from teachers, especially at the elementary level, that they don't have enough time each day to teach their classes and load everything to Schoology. Instead, teachers must do this during the evening and weekends when they should be relaxing and spending time with their families. We've brought these concerns and many others to the attention of this board and the curriculum and instruction team on numerous occasions, and have been left with less than satisfactory responses. Unfortunately, it's way too late to scrap what we have and start over. Our only option is to identify these problem areas and create a plan to fix them. Sadly, I've yet to see any proof of this happening. Our administration is still communicating with parents as if this school year is business as usual. In fact, in contrast to letting parents know that there are some problems, the communication is focused entirely on ensuring students are logging in daily and spending enough time in front of their computer. When we asked the CNI team what the plan was to fix all these issues, we were met with a half-baked plan, and I use the word plan generously. Overworked virtual academy teachers will be forced to supplement the material where needed and remove modules from Edgenuity that don't align with state standards, all while monitoring way too many students across multiple grades and subjects. In the meantime, the CNI team advised us they are trying to get ahead so they can start reviewing material for the next 9 weeks. Given the amount of work assigned to teachers and the fact that many of them are already sacrificing their free time just to keep up, I fail to see how the district expects anyone to get ahead. This is not a plan, it's a hope and a prayer, and our teachers and our students deserve better. Tonight, the administration is asking the board for approval of its virtual academy plan to be submitted to the state for official approval. I'm asking the board to not rubber stamp this plan, but to ask real questions that hold administration accountable for how it's going to fix these ongoing issues. I'm also asking that the board adjust the academic calendar. The board has the power to delay the start of the second quarter. Instead of hoping to have time to ensure our students are receiving an appropriate education, let's guarantee the time to make sure this is happening. Additionally, this break will give our teachers a chance to master the Schoology platform and create a system that allows them to update their classes and maintain some work-life balance. I recognize that changes of this nature can be disruptive to our school community and the city. However, the alternative is to press forward without a game plan and leave the education and success of our students up to chance. That is not a viable option. I acknowledge that this school year is one that none of us have seen before, and I hope we never see it again. Our schools and administration were forced to come up with solutions to situations we never dreamed of, and did so on a very tight time frame. I understand that a perfect solution to educating students at home and in person doesn't exist. There are going to be problems no matter what platform or program the administration decided to use. However, we cannot simply sit back and say, well, we tried. When our students fail in the classroom, we don't simply shrug our shoulders and move on. We go back, look at the problem from another angle, and ask them to try again. And this is what I ask of our administration. You didn't get it right the first time, and that's okay. No one expected perfection. But you don't get to shrug and move on. You must go back, look at the problem, and try again, because our students are counting on you. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Sir, would you like to speak as well? Thank you for being here and for your comments.
Good evening. My name is Nick Negavetich. As a follow-up to my wife's comments, I'd like to read you a message sent to us by a San Angelo ISD teacher with over a decade of teaching experience. Their comments are in regarding to the Virtual Learning Academy. And I quote, "Instead of providing a rich educational environment with interaction from staff members for kids learning at home in a virtual environment, we are letting a subscription service babysit them so we don't have to put mental energy or actual money into educating them. They've said for years that relationships are the most important part of education. Edgenuity does nothing to promote this relationship. Watching the same video over and over again does not help someone learn something if they don't understand it. If they don't understand it the first or second time, they surely aren't going to understand it when they watch the same video a third time. The most important thing in education is the rapport between the student and the teacher, and you cannot have rapport with an Edgenuity video. When we used Edgenuity in an intervention setting, I had 25 kids who were supposed to log on and do roughly 40 minutes of math content a day. I was supposed to walk around, monitor that they were on the right site, and answer any questions. I had a decent group of average kids. The content was so completely boring, though, that even kids who were completely fine and engaged in my regular class tuned out. I had discipline issues from kids I've never had discipline issues with before, and I don't know that I could say that anybody actually learned anything. I know a bunch of kids are coming back at the 9 weeks, not because their families truly feel safe, but because they feel like the current approach is against the well-being of their children. Which is why when my friends asked about it ahead of time, I recommended that they withdraw their student from public school in SAISD to do an online homeschool like Connections or K-12, which is intentionally designed to be an online public school and not just classes that are farmed out so that most of our staff members can worry about the kids who are in person. And I believe in it, public schools. My children are in public schools. I have taught only in public schools, and I have been doing this for more than a decade. The divide between the haves and the have-nots has only grown broader during this pandemic. For example, Edgenuity does not meet the needs of differentiated instruction for special needs students because it cannot. It's just garbage. I don't think most of our school board realizes this. Everyone here has had some job that they've had to do a training video day, right? And you sit down and you try to watch it and you try to skip through it and you try to at least halfway pay attention to it. And then when you get to the test at the end, you realize you didn't pay close enough attention to something, and so you have to go back to that video and look for just the portion, and etc. Can you imagine doing that for 7 hours a day? This is what we're asking of our students. Virtual curriculum needs to be taught by real-life teachers in our district, and it could be taught with minimal effort. Heck, they've already having to put stuff online, and if that means I teach my morning classes in person and my afternoon classes online, or some of us teach 3 days a week in person and 2 days a week online or whatever, that's the ethical thing to do for all of our students, not just the ones whose parents are sending them in person. Public education is our best chance at having a functional and educated democracy. We cannot do public education badly on purpose simply because it is the easiest thing to do. And we've got to try to integrate these kids who have been at home on Edgenuity. They are in no way going to be prepared to enter mid-semester or mid-year into a classroom that has been engaging and educating appropriately. As triggered as I am by the phrase, "no child left behind," guess what we're doing? As amazingly well as we did this spring, we reinvented public education in a week, essentially. We are failing our virtual learners this fall. It feels like we spent all summer pretending like something was going to be fine, were shocked when it wasn't, and then slapped something together. A lot of our kids whose families made the decision to learn virtually are either themselves medically fragile or have a family member whose health puts them in a high-risk category if the child brings this novel virus home. It's a disgrace to make the safe choice for these families a penalty by providing them with a subpar education. School board, this is one of your teachers, one who's had experience with this online platform. You should really listen to him. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your comments. Any comments from our board team concerning the items A through F? If not, all in favor of our motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed indicate by saying no. Our motion passes. Item 7 is reports from student enrollment on the 10th day of school. We've been provided that information previously in the Friday facts. I think that indicates that we have a number of students that we're still looking for, hoping that they will return to our district. Not as many districts our size. We also have an update on academic. Let's stop. Can we stop and take a break? I would love to do that. So let's do that, and then we'll move forward. I had someone indicate that's in the public that wanted to speak that didn't get their opportunity to do so. So I'm going to allow that to take board president privilege and allow them to do that. So if they would come forward at this time, and please limit your comments to 5 minutes. Thank you. And introduce yourself.
I'm Susie Smith, and I am still concerned about the same 3 issues that I was concerned about when all of this started with the petition, and that is the timing of this petition and the outside influence of the petition, and that this would be the first domino to fall. And it has been acknowledged that the same issue is taking place in other locations. The very same issue, which is very interesting to me. If this is a local issue, the timing of it, and with it happening in so many other places, as a thinking person, I reason that that is because of outside influences. And that if we give in to this change, it will only be the first domino to fall, which I mentioned at the first meeting. And now, several weeks later, we are already hearing of a second school that's targeted. And because of the reasoning behind the desire for the name change, it won't be the last. And others have stated that. And so again, I just reiterate it. That was my feeling from the very beginning, and I feel like it's been validated. As far as the comments tonight and other times about discrimination and white privilege, and especially the last board meeting, as an older person, I felt like that, they were ready for me to be put on the ash heap because I was an old white person. And so I found that offensive, but I'm not going to beat anybody up about it, and I'm not going to start a petition. As far as the discrimination, 3 of my 10 grandchildren, only 3 of my 10 grandchildren have attended school here in San Angelo. And one of the 3 attended Lee. And he was bullied. He's Caucasian. He was bullied. And he had to go to, he tried 2 different schools here in San Angelo and was bullied in both of them. Now, I didn't get details on it because we didn't make a big deal about it, other than the fact that his parents, and his mother is a teacher, and his parents, concerned about their child, wanted to find a place where he could go to school in peace. And so he is no longer going in the San Angelo school district. As far as the other 2 granddaughters, they attended Lincoln, and I found out that they were bullied. And it was racial discrimination in reverse of, white privilege. And so it's not just the children of color, as it's referred to nowadays, that are discriminated against and bullied. And what my granddaughters did was they focused on their academics. And the one that just graduated was 6th in her class. So just, some personal situations there. As far as the exclusivity And the inclusiveness, hear about the inclusiveness, but what I find is interesting is that we're talking about being inclusive by excluding. And that seems to be completely ignored. So, and as far as the, discussion tonight about the community and the division in the community, and I think I had mentioned last time that I had it on pretty good resource that an individual who went and asked in the office there at Robert E. Lee if there had been any racial issues going through the school that had caused problems. So if these people had difficulties, surely it would go through the office. And this individual was told, no, they didn't have any record of any racial dissension or problems. And so, I don't know. I
Ms.
just
Smith,
know
could
this
you wrap up your comments,
very
please?
credible person, and that was the information he was given. And so about the divisiveness, the petition that was started to change the name is what has divided this community. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments and for your patience. Okay, we will move back to the item 7 on our agenda, which is student enrollment report. I discussed that right as we were taking our break. We get that on a weekly basis. We discussed at our pre-agenda meeting as well. So we're currently serving about 14,000 students, which is a little bit, about 400 students less than what we had at this same time last year. Our next item is item B, which is an update on academic progress, and Dr. Ritter is going to help us with that. Thank you, Dr. Ritter.
Thank you, Dr. Detloff, Mr. Lehman, and members of the board. And so just a little bit of clarification. I wanted the board to understand as well that with the approval of the asynchronous virtual plan, it's the template, the plan that was just approved tonight, we continue to make revisions and improvements to that as a fluid plan that we present to TEA, and they approve that we are going asynchronous. That simply is what the plan is that we are not doing an asynchronous plan. We are going asynchronous, which means that our students are engaging in virtual learning that can be recorded in advance, that can be sessions they can access at a different time, and it's not exactly the same time as the exact classes that they would be participating in as their in-person peers. So if that helps you also just to understand that we continue to revise it, we continue to improve it as we go with feedback that we receive daily. So we're continuing to work on that. So, and this was actually the topic of the academic progress for the evening, to just give you an update on our virtual learning, that we are successfully moving forward with both of our instructional platforms, the in-person and our virtual academy. We announced last week our plans for families to have the opportunity to switch platforms during a window that ends this Friday, September 25th. The new 9 weeks begins October 19th. And so this time in between we'll be using to adjust student and teacher schedules, to make improvements to the platform, to prepare for student needs in the selected platform. We've already had many families indicate their intent to change to one or the other platform through the intent form provided. And we have requests for both in-person and virtual. So we're happy to continue to provide our families with options and support to participate in the learning modality that best fits their student needs. We've received helpful feedback from our virtual families in the use of Edgenuity, which is the platform we are using for the virtual academy instruction. Our district level CNI staff is continuing to provide specific support and clarification in the use of the platform. There are helpful diagnostic tools that are embedded in the platform that our teachers are learning to use and our parents are learning to use, such as the activity log, which shows specifics regarding student activity. This provides parents and district staff with details about a student's level of activity and how active they've been through a lesson. And this helps us to know how best to support a student who may be struggling and how to help. It helps us also provide parents who are serving as the instructional coaches through this process feedback in supporting their child. We continue to learn more and improve our virtual platform with this information, as we know that this is a very different experience for our families from their experience with digital learning last spring. And we appreciate our families and their hard work in partnering in the instructional process. So tonight we have a short 5-minute video of the day in the life of a Virtual Academy digital support teacher. We hope that you will enjoy seeing how these teachers are creating engaging learning experiences with their students and providing positive feedback and communication for our virtual families. So we'll show that video now.
Hello, my name is Cindy Grimes. I'm the digital support teacher at Lincoln Middle School.
I'm Yosh Packard. I'm the digital support teacher here at McGill Elementary.
Hi, my name is Laura Nessler. I am the digital support teacher for Holloman Elementary.
So I start off in the morning, I check my attendance for the previous day and make any corrections if the student got on at night. And then I start clearing my dashboard. My dashboard says all the alerts with students that may need help or intervention or maybe a test unlocked. Once I get that cleared, I start with emailing students, seeing if they need to Zoom with me or meet with me for tutorials. And then I also call parents and just reach out to see if there's anything that anyone needs. So what I really like about the program is that it provides a rigorous curriculum for our students. It's very regimented and very set up. It has a great routine and structure set up with it that makes it very consistent for our students.
My day usually starts with checking dojo messages, getting back to any parents that have messaged me asking questions about attendance, assignments, or just needing help either figuring out how to submit something or where a file may be. And then from there I'll go into doing my attendance, where I'll go into the Virtual Learning Academy Buzz page and I look to see who's logged in, who's turning in work, who's just going over the assignments and grading them, giving them some feedback. Feedback is just an opportunity for me to let them know that either they're doing a great job, so it's that positive reinforcement, or it's, hey, you need to add a little bit more detail, and let's go back and look at it again. This particular student has added excellent detail, so I'm going to let her know that she has some excellent detail in her responses.
Go find something that rhymes with bag. Cooper, that's funny. I basically start off when I hit the door in the morning. My conference is from 7:45 to 8:30, and I grade that whole time. I answer dojos, and we actually do that throughout the day. But starting about 8:30, we have scheduled Zooms with our kids, and during that time, we use that time as like really structured instruction, or if the whole class didn't do well on an assignment, we'll go back and kind of do a little reteach, and it's just educational time like that. And then lots of calling parents, lots of just, hey, how's Susie doing today? It's constant back and forth, making sure everybody's got what they need, basically. This is my prime number. What is it? How many maracas am I holding up? 2, right? Okay.
I'm really enjoying this year. I'm thinking that it helps me grow as a teacher because I'm getting to learn different content areas that I haven't been able to teach before.
My favorite part would be the fact that it's allowed me to interact and meet families that I normally wouldn't have. Previously, I've taught 5th grade science, so I knew all the 5th graders and I knew some of the upcoming 4th graders. But this has allowed me to meet families in kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, ones that I normally wouldn't get to interact with. I've gotten to know their kids and the parents, grandparents. So that's been a pretty neat opportunity.
Just getting to build more of that relationship with the kids, because for us, that's what it's really about. I think all teachers feel that way ultimately. So we love our kids. All of us do at every school here in San Angelo. I know that. We dived in deep with capturing kids' hearts, and for me, it's just made a huge difference in how our campus operates. And so for those kids to have to be at home and not to get to be a part of that, it worried me that they weren't going to get the things that they needed from us in an emotional way. And this is a challenging time for them because a lot of their friends are back at school and they're stuck at home, and so you gotta bring school to them somehow. And I feel like we're doing a good job with that.
Oh, what's his name?
It's a she.
What's her name?
Minnie.
I love it, Minnie. That's adorable.
So I have students who like to show their video and like to say hi or just visit with me, but then there's some who are still a little shy and don't want to turn on their screen, but they'll chat with me and they'll talk with me, and just there's a social component as well as the I need help component, because we all need that to be able to just talk with somebody else for a little bit.
In SAISD, our people
make the difference.
Make the difference.
Make the difference.
So thank you, and it's good to share that information. It's not without struggle, and we know that, but I think that these are just some examples of the great things that are going on with the virtual academy. And we would love to have all of our kids back in school because we know that is absolutely the best way for them to learn and build relationships. But for students who opt to be at home and learning virtually, and for families who determine that that's the best thing for their family, we do feel that we're providing the best opportunity possible for them to do that with lots of support from our teachers on our campuses. So we have, and this was Brandon Lagon, who is our digital innovation facilitator, one of our two, and his child is doing the virtual academy as well. And he wanted me to let you know that his child's doing really well and loves it. I think it's just every child, it's a little bit different. And so we just have to find those struggles and help work through it and customize. And that's what those teachers are doing, and the administrators, and also our district level staff to help with that as well. So thank you. Any questions?
Questions? Go ahead, Jordan.
Just to ask again, you said that with the what's the word?
Asynchronous.
Asynchronous,
Yes, sir.
The TEA thing. So we're submitting this so we can change it as we go. Like if we need to improve this or improve this, TEA won't come back and say, well, you can't do that. You've already submitted it like this, so you can't do it that way.
TEA wants us to submit what we're doing so that they can continue to provide funding is actually the purpose of that, so that they can guarantee that we will continue to have funding beyond our grace period for ADA. So for them to be able to grant us funding for our virtual students the way that we are going to be getting funding for ADA for those students, they just have to have a plan on file that they approve, but you can continue to make improvements to your plan as you go.
Okay, thank you, Jenna.
Absolutely.
Jen, I have a question also.
Yes.
Just for the sake of people who have been watching and maybe don't know everything about Edgenuity that we do, can you talk a little bit about why Edgenuity was chosen and maybe how many districts across the state are using it?
Yes, certainly. We have a history of Edgenuity for 4.5 years, and several of us also had a history with it previously in other districts. And there are many districts. As a matter of fact, last week I was just on Texas Public Accountability Consortium there were 95 people there and about 60 districts represented. And many, I don't know an exact number, many of those districts were also utilizing the Edgenuity platform and had done similar research and had experiences with them. In looking at other platforms that were available, Edgenuity by far exceeded what others would offer with all of the tools and diagnostics that they provide and the support that they provide to the districts, support through training, professional learning for our teachers, and just by the minute, literally, around the clock, we can get support from them, and we have them on our cell phones, and they're responsive. They call us back, they go in, they work with anything that comes up, and they are constantly trying to improve that platform as well. And so when we raise issues, we know that they are going to be responsive, and they have addressed every single thing that we have brought forward to them. And you know, they want feedback. They want the parent feedback. They want the student feedback. They want our teachers' feedback and our administrators' feedback as well. So we provide that often. But we did extensive research through this. And you know, it's a national platform. And their elementary platform it's new this year, but they wanted to try to provide something in Texas, across the nation actually, with an elementary platform that would provide us what we needed. And I will say the digital support teachers that you saw, the two that were Holloman and McGill, who are digital support teachers for 2 of our elementary schools, they're really helping to lead that. And we're holding PLCs, our professional learning community, weekly meetings, every other one. Our team goes in person and helps and sits there with them and works through issues that they have. Plus we have PLCs every week with all of those teachers for the level to help work through issues that they bring forward, and then that we go take to Edgenuity and ask for their partnership in helping to address. So we feel very confident that it's been a good thing for our students. We have a lot of really good comments as well about the platform. Certainly.
Thanks for your question. Maybe anything else? Mr. Dindal?
No, sir.
Okay, anybody? So what else do we need to do to further engage our parents to make sure that they recognize the amount of research that we've done, why this program was chosen over others, that type of thing. I think, we need to tell our story and make sure that they know that it wasn't a haphazard decision. It was something that we considered over the summer, and that we are working to improve that. How do we engage those parents and students? And then the second part of that question is, we know that elementary students are, in my opinion, they're desperate for to have contact with a particular person. They get enough virtual with every other toy that they might have or device. So how do we, are the people that are doing instruction for them successful, or is one of their strengths making sure that they communicate in an outstanding manner with their students?
So yes, I think that's something that they're working on constantly. Brandon Lagon is serving as our district administrator over our virtual academy, along with Candy Callis and Ricky Black. And our whole CNI team, the facilitators, going and helping teachers to share ideas and learn ways, much like what you saw in the video, where they're trying to engage their students. Of course, it's all virtual, but they're doing additional Zooms with them. They're having additional opportunities for them to do engaging lessons. We have families submitting things just on their own about, we went to the Texas State Aquarium in Corpus Christi, and we took our lesson, and we did our lesson there, and sharing some different ideas. And there are also, even with fine arts, and those are some other things that I can feature. Like, we have great success with music. That is not through Edgenuity. That is a district developed. We also have district developed courses as well. And that's been extremely successful for those elementary students. But just trying to increase the engagement, trying to increase the opportunities for feedback and for interaction. And anytime there is a concern, we directly connect. Generally, there are issues that we can tell through the diagnostic tools, looking through and help the parents understand what they can do to help their child. Many times it's because a child maybe has gotten behind in the program, and TEA does require us to say in our asynchronous plan that we have to say that it is the same number of instructional minutes that our in-person school would provide them. So in doing so, again, it's very different from what virtual learning was like last spring. And you know, in the first 2 weeks of school this year at Central High School and at Lakeview High School, that was done through Schoology, through our learning management system. Every teacher started for 2 weeks with uploading their own through Schoology, while the students who were in the actual virtual academy did work in Edgenuity. So we had both of those things going. And now that we have in person, all of the students are operating, you know, if they're in person at the high school, they're doing that with the Schoology learning management system support, which is really intended for students to be able to stay caught up with assignments. If they're absent, that the teachers have loaded in absent work or assignments. So that's the learning management system with the Schoology. So trying to just get all of these platforms going and operating in a way that is operational and successful, it's been a lot, but we really think that we're seeing a lot of the benefit for it. It's taken some weeks because you couldn't turn it on early. You had to start on the first day of school when your platforms could be active for them to work with your students when they were actually engaged in learning. So continuing to improve that, and I don't know let me know if I didn't answer both of yours about the engagement or communication.
Yeah, I think the communication is something that, you know, we just got to get better at, make sure that those that aren't complaining, I think we're hearing you are dealing with those that have concerns or complaints.
Yes.
I feel comfortable with us doing that, but I'm not sure that those that aren't bold enough to contact a board member or contact one of y'all, we just need to make sure that we're doing everything we can to answer their questions before they're asked.
Yes.
Or to let those people know that, hey, this is some common asked questions and this is the resolution to your problem. I think that's something we really need to work on.
Yes, agreed.
If we're not doing that. So.
Yeah, and also equipping our virtual teachers and our campus administrators. They are their students. So we have told our families, you know, if you have questions, please talk to your virtual teacher, to your digital support teacher. Generally, that right there is where things get ironed out. If there needs to be additional, or if we're looking at reports and we see that a student isn't successful, then those teachers are reaching out, the principals are reaching out, and our district people who are working with it as well are also reaching out. But 9 times out of 10, things are being resolved at the campus level because it's generally, in the beginning, some of them, the students might have been like in middle school or high school, they might have been somehow enrolled in the wrong class, or their schedule wasn't accurate, or somehow their schedule that they were placed in had needed to be altered. So those things were taken care of, and then once they started going, they were experiencing success. But if they haven't, and they contacted the campus and then worked through the issues there, they have found, the ones who have called and we've said, you know, we pull the campus in, they resolve the issues and work through them.
Okay. Thank you for your report.
Thank
Please
you.
keep us updated on that.
Absolutely, thank you.
I may not be the only one that's receiving calls about that. So I guess item 9, we covered item 8. Item 9 is consider bills, accounts, and financial statements for August of 2020. Do we have a motion to approve that?
Move for approval.
Second.
So we have a motion from Mr. Dent on a second from Dr. Kingman. Do we have any questions or comments from our board team? I would remind those that might still be watching our live feed on, or our feed on Channel 4 that we review all this in our pre-agenda board workshop. Any public comment concerning our bills, accounts, and financial statements? Seeing none, I'll call for the motion. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, indicate by saying no. Our motion passes. Our next item is our announcements. We are having a TASB annual convention that's virtual on September 30th through October 2nd. We as a board team will try to do that here on the 1st and 2nd, I believe, of October from 12 to 2 each day. So if you're able to get on either of those, that'd be great. Mr. Hernandez?
Yeah, I'm gonna be gone on the 1st and the 2nd.
Okay.
Yeah, be in Dallas. Adrian's getting his arm operated.
Oh, that's, okay. Well, you need to be there. So Adrian's his son, for those of you who don't know. So, yeah, we'll, if we can meet, that would be good. And if not, it gives us an opportunity to train if we're able to be there. So that's our Finance and Pre-Agenda Board workshop is on the 13th. And our regular board meeting, which is the 13th, as a reminder, as it says in our agenda, is on a Tuesday. Monday's a school holiday, and then October 19th is a Monday, and that'll be our regular board meeting. We're going to go into closed session. We're going to be able to do that this evening under
072 55107.
thank you, 551072, which is a discussion of real property. So we'll move forward and do that. Okay, after some delay, I'll call our meeting back to order. We took no official board action in closed session, and certainly part of that would mean that we didn't take any votes. And hearing no objection, we'll stand adjourned.